Dr. Night Echoes. Good evening, everyone. Today I'm bringing you some Home Alone horror stories. I was home alone that afternoon, the kind of quiet where every sound feels too sharp. The family next door, Jenny and her kid, kept to themselves, but we'd always been friendly enough to borrow sugar or check mail for each other. So when Jenny banged on my door out of breath and shaking, I knew something was seriously wrong. She didn't explain much, just kept saying she needed help, that her daughter was acting strange. I followed her into their flat, expecting maybe a panic attack, maybe a seizure. Nothing prepared me for what I walked into. Her daughter was in the middle of the living room, knees pulled up, hands gripping her hair. She was rocking back and forth, whispering something so fast I couldn't catch a single word. It didn't sound like any language I knew, not even close. The noises were clipped and sharp, like she was trying to force sounds her throat wasn't meant to make. When we stepped in, she stopped rocking and lifted her head. Her eyes didn't track either of us. They were fixed slightly off to the side, like she was staring at someone standing right next to me, someone I couldn't see. I backed up without meaning to. Jenny tried talking to her, but her daughter just started muttering faster, louder, until it turned into this raw, strained sound that didn't match her tiny frame. I called 911 and didn't even go outside. I didn't want to leave Jenny alone in that room. The dispatcher stayed on the line while we tried not to panic. When the officers arrived, all 5 of them stepped inside, expecting something routine. But the moment they touched her shoulders, her whole body jerked with impossible strength. She twisted out of grips, kicked, shoved, not wild flailing, but deliberate, sharp movements, like she was reacting to something none of us heard. I watched 5 grown officers in full gear struggle to keep her on the stretcher. They weren't overpowered by size. They were overpowered by something else, something that didn't fit the room, or the girl, or the moment. Even when they finally got her into the ambulance, she didn't stop staring at that empty spot in the doorway, like whatever she'd been looking at was still standing there. I was alone in my college hostel that week. My roommate, Nancy, had gone back to her village in Indonesia, and we talked almost every night, usually quick chats. So when she called me on Skype, I expected the same thing. The moment her camera turned on, I knew something was wrong. She looked pale, jumpy, like she'd been crying. She said her aunt was possessed by something bad. I almost laughed because we were science students, and I told her not to scare herself. She didn't even argue. She just said, "If you don't believe me, watch." Before I could answer, a few religious healers walked into the room on her side. Jenny propped her phone in the corner so I could see everything. Her aunt looked normal, quiet, even tired. I was about to tell her it was nothing when the chanting got louder and her aunt's posture changed like someone had flipped a switch. Her shoulders tightened, her head dropped, her breathing turned ragged. One of the men placed a small black bird on the floor. Her aunt's head snapped toward it, and she grabbed it with both hands. Then she leaned down. The video quality wasn't clear, but I saw enough, and I saw the men step back, startled, and Jenny cover her mouth, whispering frantically. Something about it felt wrong, not like panic or confusion, but like she knew exactly what she was doing. I hung up without saying goodbye, and my hands were shaking. I didn't sleep for a week, replaying the moment her aunt changed, the moment that chanting began, like she'd been waiting for it. I fell asleep on the couch watching American Dad reruns, half wrapped in a blanket. The kind of sleep where you're aware of noises but don't react. I woke up because I heard the back door open. Not slam, not creak, just a confident click of someone letting themselves in. At first I didn't panic because that's how it sounded when my mom came home. Footsteps came up the stairs in this slow, steady pace, like whoever it was knew exactly where the bedrooms were. I sat up and called out for my mom. Nothing. The footsteps kept climbing. I froze. There wasn't supposed to be anyone home. The door to the room opened just enough for a face to appear. A blonde guy with a patchy beard, maybe late 20s. He looked as surprised as I felt. His eyes flicked over the room like he was checking whether I was alone. Then he asked, almost casually, "Is this the right house?" I told him no. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He just turned and bolted down the stairs so fast it sounded like he almost fell. By the time I looked through the window, he was sprinting down the driveway. Later, I told a friend who worked with the local police, and he told me something that kept me up for days. A man matching that description had been breaking into houses in the area. If someone was home, he pretended he was confused and left immediately. But if a house was empty, he cleaned it out. Electronics, jewelry, whatever he could grab fast. It matched everything about him. The way he had moved quietly, the way his eyes searched the corners of the room, the way he didn't waste a second leaving. I still think about one thing. He didn't wander in. He went straight upstairs. He'd been here before. The parents told me their daughter never wakes up once she's asleep, so I wasn't expecting anything. I put the monitor on the coffee table and watched TV, checking the screen every now and then. Around 11, the picture shifted. Not the kid, the camera. It tilted a few inches to the left like someone had nudged it. I waited, thinking maybe the stand was loose. But then it shook again. A small, deliberate tremor, like fingers brushing the side. Before I could lean forward, the entire screen went to static. Not a glitch, a full burst. The kind that fills a room with a cold, buzzing silence. When the video came back, the girl was standing in her crib. She wasn't crying. She was screaming with her mouth wide open, her eyes locked on something at the bottom of the frame. The kind of scream that doesn't sound like a kid at all, more like someone trying to warn you. I called her mom. She sounded half asleep and said it was probably just a nightmare. But nightmares don't move cameras. Nightmares don't wipe the entire feed. The girl kept screaming for several minutes, then stopped all at once. Not gradually, just cut off. She lowered herself back down but didn't lie down. She just stared at the corner of the crib, her head tilted like she was listening. I sat there watching the monitor, waiting for the picture to glitch again. It didn't. But something else happened. The audio from the crib kept picking up faint clicking sounds, soft but steady. It reminded me of someone tapping fingernails on wood. I went into her room only because it felt worse not to. She was silent and awake, clutching her blanket, staring past me. The camera was facing the wall now, completely turned away from the crib. I didn't touch it. I didn't want to see what direction it had been facing before it hit the wall. When the parents came home, they brushed it off. But the next time I babysat, the monitor wasn't out. The mom just said, "We've been hearing things through it at night. We don't use it anymore." She didn't say what things. I was 14, staying at my cousin's house for the weekend, and for some reason, the air in the living room felt wrong that night, like someone had just left the room before I came in. I turned toward the kitchen to grab a drink, and as I stepped in, I saw a man standing outside the window. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring directly at my cousin, who who was sitting on the floor playing a game, completely unaware. The man's face looked ruined somehow, like he was sick in a way people aren't supposed to look. I got this cold, twisting feeling in my stomach and told my cousin he needed to go upstairs. He didn't ask why, just followed me, and I put him in bed before grabbing the only thing in reach, a metal meat tenderizer. When I went back to the kitchen, the window was empty. Nothing but the yard. I locked every door and every window, even though my hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the keys. I was about to call the cops when a window shattered downstairs. The sound hit me in the chest. Heavy, dragging footsteps moved through the first floor, slow and steady, like he was checking each room one by one. I pushed my cousin's door shut and held the handle with both hands because I didn't know what else to do. The footsteps came up the stairs, paused outside the room, then started moving away toward the basement door. I don't know why he chose to go down there. When the police finally arrived, they found him crouched behind the water heater. He didn't run, didn't fight, just stared. They told us he was a missing psychiatric patient, but that didn't make anything feel better. I still hear that slow walk in my head sometimes, each step deliberate, like he already knew the layout of the house. It started with the sticky note, a small square stuck dead center on my apartment door, with a red heart drawn on it. No message, no initials, no reason for it to be there. I live alone. I don't date. And nobody I know would ever drop by unannounced. It bothered me enough that I peeled it off with a napkin and tossed it without touching it. The next night, I was walking toward the kitchen when the doorknob rattled. Not a casual jiggle. Someone tried to twist it hard enough that the metal clicked against the frame. Then it stopped. 10 seconds later, they tried again. This time faster, like they were testing how much force it would take to pop the lock. And when that didn't work, the door shook from a single kick. I froze in the hallway, listening to the breathless silence that followed, like whoever had tried to get in was still standing on the other side, deciding whether to try again. It happened 3 times that week. Same pattern. Violent rattling, a single kick, then nothing. I called the landlord, but he just shrugged and said the security cameras at the entrance were broken. He promised to fix them. He didn't. The thing that finally stopped it wasn't clever. I dragged an old pair of my brother's work boots from storage, huge, steel-toed, size 13, and set them neatly outside the door, angled like someone had taken them off after a long shift. I didn't hear anything for 2 days. On the 3rd night, I woke up at 3 a.m. to the soft scrape of rubber moving across concrete. Just one slow drag, as if someone nudged one of the boots with their foot. I waited, holding my breath, but nothing else happened. In the morning, the boots were both turned to face the door, toes pointing inward, like someone had been standing right in front of them. I haven't touched them since. I don't know who was at my door or why the boots were enough to stop them, but sometimes, late at night, I hear footsteps in the hallway, slow, measured, stopping exactly where the boots sit, like they're waiting for whoever lives in them to open the door. I just turned off the lamp around 1:30 in the morning. My cat curled against my ribs, purring so softly it almost blended with the outside noise. I was drifting off when I heard a meow from across the room, too low, too flat, almost like someone mocking the sound. I thought it came from the open window, so I opened my eyes expecting to see a stray. Instead, There was a kid standing in the middle of my bedroom, not moving, not breathing loud, just standing there in this faded red jumper that looked way too thin for the cold. One arm lifted above his head like he was trying to get my attention, except his hand didn't wave. It just hovered there, stiff. I jumped up and hit the light. The second it flicked on, he was gone. Not ran out, gone. Just gone. My cat bolted under the bed, tail puffed like she'd been electrocuted. I didn't sleep after that, and the next nights were worse. The TV turned itself on with the volume barely audible, whispering voices that disappeared when I got close. The shadows in the hallway stretched the wrong way, bending toward my room even when the lights were off. My cat stopped sleeping next to me and stayed at the edge of the bed, staring at the doorway like she was waiting for someone to walk in. One night, something brushed my ankle under the blanket, light, like fingertips testing where I was. I grabbed my phone and sat up, shaking. My cat hissed at the sliding closet door. Her reflection in the mirror didn't match her posture. She was staring at the closet, but in the mirror, she was staring behind me. That's when I saw him again. In the reflection, the boy stood behind me, arm lifted the same way, head tilted like he was studying the back of my neck. His mouth looked wrong, soft, stretched, like he was about to mimic something again. I left the house that night and didn't return until sunrise. I keep telling myself exhaustion played tricks on me, but sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I hear that same flat, quiet meow right by my ear.
The night I moved in alone, I kept the windows open because the paint fumes were getting to me.
I'd been working on the guest room, trying to get at least one wall finished before my husband arrived the next day. At some point, the music on my phone cut out, and the room fell into this heavy kind of quiet where you suddenly notice every small sound. That's when I heard the leaves outside shifting in a slow rhythm. Not wind. Wind moves everything. This sounded like someone walking without trying very hard to hide it. I stepped toward the window to close it, annoyed more than scared, and that's when I saw him. A man standing under the tree in the backyard, head tilted up at me like he'd already been staring for a long time. He was maybe 5 feet from the back door, too close. The house had a 6-foot fence around the yard, but that didn't matter, because he had already climbed over it. I dropped down onto the floor instinctively and crawled toward the hallway, trying not to make the windows shake. The screen door downstairs was probably the only thing between us. I called my husband, whispering, and he called 911 from his end. I remember trying not to breathe too loudly, listening for footsteps, but everything outside went quiet, too quiet. When the cops came knocking, I didn't even want to stand up. They swept the yard, checked the fence. Nothing. But the officer pointed out something I hadn't seen. One of the fence panels had fresh scrape marks on the top edge, like something heavy dragged over it. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat against the bedroom wall, staring at the backyard through a crack in the blinds. The next morning, I walked outside to prove to myself it wasn't as bad as it felt. That's when I saw the dirt under the tree. It was disturbed, but not from footprints. It looked like someone had been standing there long enough to shift their weight back and forth, digging shallow grooves into the soil, like he'd been waiting for something, or someone. I got home a little after midnight, arms shaking from hauling boxes all day. I remember dropping my keys louder than usual, and the sound echoed in a way that made the apartment feel too empty. I went to grab something from the fridge and noticed my bedroom door sitting open by an inch. I never leave it like that. I called out for Mark, expecting his usual sarcastic, "What?" Nothing. The whole place felt flat, like nobody had breathed in it for hours. I pushed the door open with my foot, checked inside, saw everything exactly how I left it, and tried to shake off the weird feeling. I went back to the kitchen, turned on the microwave, and that's when I heard a dull thump from the hallway. Then another, closer, heavier. I yelled for Mark again, annoyed more than scared, and right then the microwave beeped. A voice from the hall said, "I dropped something." It sounded just like him. Same casual tone. My phone buzzed before I could answer. A text from Mark. "Still at work. Leave the door unlocked." I didn't move for at least 2 full seconds. When I finally looked up, there was a man I had never seen before, standing at the end of the hallway, like he'd been waiting for me to finish reading that message. He held the kitchen knife low at his side, the point angled toward the floor. I didn't think. I bolted out the door and down the stairs, screaming for help. The cops didn't find any forced entry, no missing items, nothing touched except a tiny folded note tucked under the salt shaker on the counter. One word written in small, almost neat handwriting. Soon. I still replay the voice in my head sometimes, the perfect imitation of Mark, the way it answered at exactly the right second, like it had been listening the whole time.